Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Jeff, we make really good friends, but we make better enemies. This is a brand new edition of you like what I did there? The Payoff, and we're covering In Your House, Good Friends, Better Enemies, the Heartbreak Kid against Diesel. This is going to be a good one. I'm Tom Healy, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jeffrey Ryan.
You said it a couple weeks ago or last week, whatever it was. Like we just have more energy in the morning, and I don't know if it's because it's the morning and I'm just ready for the day. But man, that was that was stupid. But,
no, hey, you know what? This recording in the middle of a shoot work day is better than 8 o'clock at night. I got to tell you.
Yeah, I know you and I we're having a lot better time kind of finding our schedules and making it work. So, of course, glad everybody tuning in once again. Hope we're bringing you a little bit of a joy during all these crazy times. So, subscribe to The Payoff wherever you listen. Give us those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. We've been seeing a lot more activity on the social media, Twitter, things like that. So it's great to see fans letting us know. I know our kind of Wrestlemania cards went over well. Tom's was a little bit better, but that's okay. But it's great to see fans kind of, shooting us those messages, letting us know about, how they feel about the different matches that we're doing and giving us suggestions, of course, too. Like, we may not always have a guest, but we love talking about wrestling just as much as everybody else. So at Payoff Pod, make sure to find us on all that social media. So, Tom, what do you got right now?
Dude, just hit the archives if you haven't heard some of our recent episodes. We're trying to be a little calendar topical, if you will. And so, we're covering some of these great post-WrestleMania feuds, matches. Jeff, what I find interesting is by default, a lot of times we remember and appreciate and review things better that happened at WrestleMania, right? So if it happens at WrestleMania, you remember the match, you probably remember some of the moments associated with it, and then look, less people watch the In Your House following WrestleMania. Less people watch Backlash following WrestleMania. So some of this stuff, there's less eyeballs on. Some of it you've just forgotten about. So what I think's fun in this post-WrestleMania stuff is we're covering some matches and moments and payoffs that I think are excellent, but they get lost under the shuffle a little bit because you simply don't remember them happening. So this match that we're going to cover today, it was better than their WrestleMania match, but everyone remembers their WrestleMania match from a year prior, right? So we're trying to find some of these, I wouldn't call them hidden gems, but things that maybe have gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. And I think as we map out the rest of the year and we keep going, I think that's going to be our goal. Is obviously we want to cover some of the biggest, most famous matches, but we also want to find some of these ones where, they've gotten maybe a little lost or forgotten in time, but they're awesome. And we'll find them. And then you watch them and tell us what you think as well. And we hope you enjoy the show and everything else we're doing here. So I'm excited to cover this one. I'm excited to keep doing these post-WrestleMania ones because there's been some fun ones and they'll continue to be. So let me jump into, in addition to that, why else I wanted to cover this one. Huge Shawn Michaels mark. I love the Diesel stuff. And we'll talk more about this, but what's cool about this, Jeff, is this is kind of the culmination of, in a lot of ways, a 2-year build. Diesel comes in as the bodyguard. Then all of a sudden he's wrestler. Then he's an Intercontinental champion. Then he's split up for Shawn Michaels and he's a good guy and he's a world champion. And then, they obviously have their WrestleMania match, but then they come back around and collide. And this time it's completely reversed. Shawn's the good guy. Shawn's the world champ. And it's the end of this feud because Diesel's obviously going down south to Atlanta. Terrible Southern accent, but dude, I mean, this is a great kind of culmination of again, a 2-year story. And because we have, 18 hours of wrestling to produce every single week, and we have a pay-per-view every month, and we have shows in Saudi Arabia and Australia and everywhere else, you just don't see some of these 2-year builds anymore. So let's appreciate some of the better aspects of old school wrestling. And I think that's one of them. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think all I could think when you were kind of talking to it is like some of these matches, a lot of matches, like after we've gone back and you and I have watched some of these, like there's been a lot of rose-colored glasses on some of this stuff that like, we remember them as being what they were and they were such a big deal. But then when you go back and actually watch it, sometimes the match itself is not good. And so you do have to incorporate the different, like the build and like the aftermath and things like that. I think like WrestleMania will always be WrestleMania. I think like these post WrestleMania pay-per-views are super important too, because it does, especially I think back then it set up a lot of different stories coming out of WrestleMania to kind of, get the year rolling again. I think there's less of that now, but I think that we are seeing that, back then it was some of these, and this was, and we'll see as we kind of get into it, there was a lot that kind of surrounded this match. I think that's why I was excited to dig into this one, because I knew the match happened, but this was a long time coming, I say, and there was good, bad, both sides of this, heel, face, everything, teams, tag teams, all of that stuff. And so, and then of course we will talk about the big piece of this that happened after this. And of course the curtain call. And so we'll get into this. And so I think there's just so many different aspects of this, which is why I'm excited and to kind of get into this one and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So let's jump right into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So here we are, April 28th, 1996, pay-per-view following WrestleMania 12. It's In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. Now, you may or may not remember this, but these In Your Houses, they were 2 hours long, and a lot of them built around one match. So, and I'll get more into this in a second, but a lot of these were kind of one big main event match that was the theme of it, like Beware of Dog, which was Shawn and Bulldog, right? So you had those, and then the undercards, because it was 96 WWF, kind of sucked. But again, that's what the tagline was, and that's what was built around this. Omaha, Nebraska, the Omaha Civic Auditorium, about 10,000 in attendance. And Jeff, I got to tell you, at the beginning of this pay-per-view, so I went back and I watched the beginning of the pay-per-view and I watched the build, the vignette they aired, but I haven't watched the match. And I like us doing that together so you get our kind of authentic, in-the-moment reactions. But, dude, you put this pay-per-view on, classic Vince McMahon on commentary. And I swear to you, and I'm not exaggerating, it was, welcome everyone to Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the heartland of America. Welcome to In Your House. I mean, the enthusiasm of this man for being in Omaha, Nebraska on a cold February night, or I'm sorry, what was it? April night? What did I say? March night, April night. Yeah,
April night. Yep.
Oh my God, it was so funny. I mean, it was so over the top. Like, this guy was, in a war and there's enemy fire coming. It was like so elaborate. And I'm like, I miss him on commentary because there's no bigger fan of the WWE than Vince McMahon. I mean, he genuinely loves this shit. And he was so enthusiastic and so good. It was just funny. It was like, it was the welcome to WrestleMania enthusiasm, but we're in Omaha, Nebraska at In Your House. So it was just great. Go back and watch that before you watch the match. Let me get into this card, then I've got a couple additional things. So, dark match of Mark Mero, who had recently debuted. He's defeating the 1-2-3 Kid by DQ. Again, 2020, here we are all these years later, but it's like you bring this guy in, you got the whole package with him and Sable, and, it's exciting. Why put him in a dark match, right? Don't understand that. We open with Owen and Bulldog defeating Ahmed and Jake Roberts in a tag match. We then get the Ultimate Warrior defeating Goldust by countout. 7-minute match.
Not a good match.
No, it was a terrible match. It was for the IC title. Again, why put the Warrior? Why put him in an IC title feud? Why put him in a match where you're going to do a bullshit finish and you're not going to give him the title? It just sucked. And I told you, the undercard of these In Your Houses really did suck, just because it was this era. Vader defeating Razor Ramon, that would of course be the swan song for the Razor Ramon character. Let him job on the way out. And
he did the work. Yep.
Yeah, he did. Bawdy Donnas, Skip and Zip with Sonny defeating the Godwins with Hillbilly Jim. Bawdy Donnas would retain their tag title. And then the reason we're here, which is this no-holds-barred WWF World title match, 18 minutes, Shawn Michaels and Diesel, which, again, was fantastic. And then, ironically, there were 3 dark matches following the pay-per-view, for the live crowd to give them more than a 2-hour show. This is fun. Savio Vega defeating Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H defeating Mark Marrow, and The Undertaker defeating Mankind. So if you went to this show live, and I love doing this because it's interesting, but you go to the show and you're getting Owen, Bulldog, Jake Roberts, The Ultimate Warrior, Vader, Razor Ramon, Hillbilly Jim, HBK, Diesel, Steve Austin, Triple H, Undertaker, Mankind. That's quite an evening at the Omaha Civic Center. Wouldn't you agree?
That's a hell of a dark card.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that dark card alone, which Mark Marrow, good on him pulling double duty on this one. Unfortunately, both of them working the dark matches. But this was really good.
It was excellent. Yeah, it was. So a couple other things I want to share. Going on around this time, there were big things, big hope for the Ultimate Warrior. They were actually doing, how they themed the house shows. They were doing the Ultimate Warrior World Tour, where they had him working Vader on top. Kind of interesting. And yep. They wanted the guy to be a star. The other thing I want to point out, Jeff, is these 96 WWF, in a lot of ways, people would say, hey, it's pretty forgettable. And I don't disagree with that, but it was a very top heavy time for the promotion. And Jeff, the top was pretty damn good. So of these In Your Houses in 96, and I want to cover some of these matches because they've gotten forgotten in time, but they're really good, and there's some good stories around them. But the February In Your House, you had Bret Hart and Diesel in a steel cage match for the title. Bret's your champion. Diesel's the heel at that point. They were having a pretty good feud. So that's a really fun one, okay? Then we go to Beware of Dog, which was that, Shawn and Davey Boy feud, which was actually really good. Now, they had some technical glitches. They had to refilm some of the matches, but the actual build to that was pretty good. They had the whole Diana Shawn angle. Bulldog, I thought, was just a great heel at this time. So that was really fun. Then they do a international incident, which took place in Canada, with a main event of Bulldog, Owen, and Vader defeating Ahmed Johnson, Shawn Michaels, and Psycho Sid. Sid was your replacement for the Ultimate Warrior, who no-showed. How I remember that is he also no-showed the house show that was taking place in Pittsburgh. And I think we got to the building thinking we'd get Warrior, and Sid was the surprise, or maybe I caught it when Jack Tunney announced it prior. But I remember him making this announcement saying the Ultimate Warrior didn't fulfill his dates as he was contractually obligated to do, and we're sliding in Psycho Sid for these, Sid or whatever they were calling him at the time, for these house shows. And that was a little behind the scenes stuff. I remember thinking, this is pretty odd, not something you heard much. So keeping with these 96 In Your House themes, then we get a match we definitely need to cover, a phenomenal one. That's where we get the Shawn Michaels and Mankind no-holds-barred match in Philadelphia. That was an awesome match. Mick Foley has said, look, this is the best match of my career. Put him on the list of about 15 guys that said their best match of their career was against Shawn Michaels. Then October's In Your House, we get the first ever Buried Alive match, Undertaker and Mankind. Awesome match, really cool visual. That was something pretty awesome. And then to round it out in December, we get Sid and we get Bret Hart in a world title match on top that was pretty good feud. So my point to this being is that these In Your Houses 96 were one match shows in a lot of cases, but the one match was pretty damn good. So that's all I got for you. Storyline wise, and I know there's a lot to cover, how do we get to this final blow-off match between Shawn and Diesel. And gosh, if my memory serves me, this is the last time these two were, at least on TV, ever in the ring together, because I don't think they ever did anything when Nash had his WWF run years later.
Yeah, and so I'll start with, so this in your house, it was April 1996. We have to go all the way back, though, to 1993 to talk about when Diesel showed up. So it was actually, if you can believe it, Shawn Michaels losing the Intercontinental Championship to Marty Jannetty, Tom's favorite. It was May 1993. He regained it really a couple weeks later, but that was because he had his debuting bodyguard, however you want to call him, or, but not a manager, but Diesel. Diesel had been around for a little bit, did a little bit of time, outside of the WWF, and the name Vince, I can already just see like Kevin Nash walking into Vince's office and Vince just losing his mind. And, the Diesel name is the kind of things I read, what came from actually, Kevin Nash is from Detroit, like a Detroit suburb. And so the Motor City, Diesel, that's where the name came from. And so I didn't know that actually before I started researching this.
I did not either. It's a good little fun fact.
Yeah. And so because the old adage, if you will, it was because it was the mean streets of the Motor City. And so because if you remember, his old theme too was just like the truck noises. And so, and things like that. Yep. And so that is where that came from. So there's your fun fact for the day. Diesel, Motor City. There you go. So,
hey, I'm gonna jump like I don't know, 15 years ahead. Do you remember that pop he got when he came back as Diesel in the Royal Rumble?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
dude, that was. I remember where I was. I had just I was in a hotel room in Indy. I was speaking at a conference. I was laying in bed. I was like kind of half asleep. It had been a long weekend, but I was watching. This was pre-network. I was watching like an illegal feed. God, I wonder if any of you remember that Justin TV, but I used to watch a bunch of pay-per-views on there.
Yep.
You remember that? Okay. And, and so I'm watching it, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm like dozing off because it really wasn't that great of a show. And it was, I'm like, holy shit. And then remember it was Matt Stryker, he marked out. And I think he actually got flack for that because they said he was too over the top. I'm like, dude, he's a fan. He probably didn't even know it was happening. So it was absolutely phenomenal. So that's why I was thinking about that.
That was good though. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was almost 18, maybe 14 months later, that August of the following year, 1994, it was actually Michaels and Diesel. They won the tag team championship. It was from the Head Shrinkers, actually. So now it was interesting that the photo is actually pretty cool because Diesel was also the Intercontinental Champ at this point too, losing the belt. It was actually the following day. It was SummerSlam to Razor Ramon. This kind of started setting up, I guess, the long kind of feud here because Diesel lost to Ramon because Michaels accidentally super kicked Diesel. So at that point, though, that was like I say, their split, one of many, where they went their separate ways. They actually went all the way until Survivor Series that November 1994, with the two of them going back and forth. So,
and that was so good.
So you then have Michaels winning the Royal Rumble 1995. We're getting a little closer here to this April date, but still got a ways to go. Michaels winning the Royal Rumble 1995. And at the time, Diesel was the champion. So setting up a match between the two of them at WrestleMania 11.
And how good was the finish to that Royal Rumble where Davey Boy thinks he wins. He's standing on the turnbuckle. They're playing his music. Obviously the way the camera work was, you had no idea Shawn held on. Boom, double axe handle knocks him out. Arguably the best finish in Rumble history. I still think that was just awesome.
A good fake. I love WWE over the years has gotten better at those fakes. Absolutely. And so especially like don't ever even we've kind of learned in the last couple of years, like don't ever get up or turn the network off if just the logo's in the bottom corner. That doesn't mean anything. And so thanks to Gargano and Ciampa for that one. But so yeah, he had which actually I did not realize this. Diesel actually won the belt from Bob Backlund. I always forget like Bob Backlund was, wrestling at that time. So deceptive how old he is. So So you've got that, and Michaels winning the Royal Rumble. He actually took a little bit of time off after this, but now we have to talk about, and I know this is a big part of this, you and I are excited to get into, we have to talk about the Click. So for those of you, most people I'm sure are familiar with the Click, heard of them before. It was 1994 before this. You've got Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, who at the time was 1-2-3 Kid, but X-Pac, Sean Waltman.
Yeah, someone had to drive the car.
Somebody, yeah, and so you've got all of them together forming the Click. It's KLIQ for those of you that aren't aware of it or ever seen it actually written. And then, of course, you had who at the time was not, Triple H, not really known as Triple H, leaving WCW, coming over to WWE as Triple H, and then he was the next member, if you will, of the Click. And so, something to keep in mind as we're kind of talking through all this. I just want to introduce the players right now because I know we've got a lot in the payoff and a lot in the aftermath to discuss on this one. So the Click, don't forget the Click. So, Michaels again, he had lost that WrestleMania match after winning the Royal Rumble. And then he actually returned that following year, Royal Rumble 1996, two-time winner. Or I don't know if it was two-time, but he won two years in a row. And so,
well, yeah, if he won 2 years in a row, it would be two-time.
No, but if he would want a time separate from that, though. So
no, that's it. Two times. The only two Rumbles he won. He was in the he came down to him and Taker that year. Taker won it. And then I think at the time, my memory serves me correctly, Hogan, I know he won it twice. I think he won it like 90, 91 or something like that, 2 years in a row. Because, he didn't win enough back then.
Yeah, right.
So, but Sean won it back to back.
So you've got that, but that set up the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 12 at this point. You also have
boyhood dream has come true.
Yes. And so this was the absolute classic Iron Man match, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, which ended in a tie, no score, tie, and then sudden death, which was just a great moment, them having to go to sudden death and all that. That's for a different episode, but that's just great stuff. So
I feel like that's one of the more polarizing matches in history, right? There's people either love it and think, God, it's amazing these guys went an hour and what a great match, and nobody else in the business could have done it at that time. And then there's other people that are like, that was god awful, it took way too long. It's just interesting. But I feel like if you had to make a list of like polarizing matches, and obviously we've seen a few of them recently, I feel like that Iron Man match would be on the top 10 of just biggest discrepancies between love or hate.
Yep. And I agree. And so, absolutely. So, you also had the introduction at this point. Kevin Nash was not with him as his bodyguard. At this point, you had Jose Lothario, of course. Can't forget that. Always coming to the ring with him. So, after this WrestleMania 12 match with Bret and Shawn, you had the start of Nash and really Razor's contract, like things starting to get a little funky here. And at this time, WCW, Eric Bischoff was running the show, paying a lot of money for these guys to come over and jump ship. And so, of course,
it's hard to believe that these two guys wanted to make twice the money and work half the dates.
Right, exactly, and have pretty much ultimate say over what happens. I'm drawing a blank on favored nations. The favored nations clause in their contract that I'm sure many of our listeners know, which is if you bring anyone else in, you have to pay us that. So if someone comes over and they negotiate $250,000 more per year, you automatically have to bump us up to that, which is crazy. It was guaranteed money too. Because I think at the time, the WWF contracts were not guaranteed. But Bischoff was millions of dollars guaranteed, which, I would go too. So, and of course, obviously, the biggest name that getting him to defect was Hulk Hogan. So you had that. And as well, eventually, Randy. So it's just all these different people. We all know kind of what happened there. So, so you had the Iron Man match, WrestleMania 12. But then you also had Diesel losing to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 12. This actually turned Diesel heel because at the time, kind of not really working that, and then went on to feud Michaels again after that. It was actually, he turned on him. It was a Madison Square Garden live event. And so, it was really, and it was how it played out in one of his last kind of TV appearances. And we didn't know this at the time until early 2000s. Diesel challenged Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship, which Michaels had won after the Iron Man match at In Your House, Good Friends, Better Enemies. So
let me hit you with a piece of trivia. Did you notice or did you see what shirt Diesel was wearing during that?
I don't know.
He was wearing the Shawn Michaels Heartbreak Hotel t-shirt to troll him. And the shirt was like, like a medium. And so it's just like tight little Heartbreak Hotel shirt. It's pretty funny. But that was the shirt that like Shawn's face was on the right corner. There's a big heart. It's just, I remember that shirt, but it was just so funny because he looked absurd in it. And it was great.
Do you have that shirt?
Yeah. I did, because it came in a pack with the hat and the glasses and the earrings.
Look at you. Yep. Of course you did. So that's how we got to this.
And there was a poster too, but I was like, man, I will wear the Shawn Michaels hat around the house while I'm playing wrestler. I will not put the Shawn Michaels poster up in my room. I drew the line there, ironically.
You drew the line or your partner drew the line, but we don't have to get into that. So, yeah. But yes, so we've got, again, after, the WrestleMania 12, setting up the match for the WWF Championship. So a lot of cool stuff happening, a few things we didn't really touch on because we got a lot more to talk about as we go through this one. So Tom, I'll kick it to you to get us into the payoff.
Dude, and there's more we could talk about. We'll talk about it during the match, but man, there's just a lot here, dude. A lot. So let's get into the match here. We're at the 1 hour, 22 minute mark of the In Your House pay-per-view, Good Friends, Better Enemies. Again, we're at the 1 hour, 22 minute mark. So right now, let's jump into the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
All right, Jeff, here we are. 1 hour, 22 minute mark. Shawn Michaels coming down to the ring, just took a Diet Coke to the face. What I love about the way he's walking in is he's not doing the sexy boy stuff. He is there for a fight. He's there for a no-holds-barred match. He's not cracking a smile. Diesel's staring at him. Boom, takes off the jacket. He's in the ring. He's punching him. You can't do this all the time, but I love when it's appropriately done, where it's, hey, I'm not here for a pro wrestling match. I'm not here as a character. I'm here for a damn fight. And I love when guys do that. Again, you can't do it every match or else it loses its luster. But for a match like this, I thought it was great.
And there's so many times too where it's appropriate, but yeah, I think the build on this one, and like I said, it's really a 3-year build with these two guys kind of being together and doing stuff with one another. I think this is just one of those where, how it played out, it was deserving of these guys to come out the way they did.
Do you like Diesel better as a heel or a face?
I think definitely a heel. It's just, he's better that way. Absolutely. Michael's going up top early.
Boom. I used to love, he did that like side moonsault back in the day. I loved it. I mean, he still did it later on, but it was like, I just love that kind of side thing he did. It was just a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good stuff there.
Dude, already going for a weapon. Did he take off somebody's shoe?
I missed it. I looked away for 2 seconds. He does have someone's shoe. Yes.
Oh, man. He just clubbed it. I wonder if that was a commentator. I think it was a Spanish commentator. But yeah, he just clubbed him over the face with his dress shoe. I love it. So yeah, I'm a Diesel as a heel guy, no question. Also, dude, I just dug this In Your House set. I don't know what it was, man. I just absolutely, I love that In Your House set. I wish like they could bring it back for something. Oh man, boom, just crushes him right into the guardrail, double axe handle to the outside. Maybe the best seller in pro wrestling history, man. HBK just looks dead, but we're getting the replay of the moonsault, which was excellent. And again, you didn't see a whole lot of that back in the day. And then boom.
Barely caught him on that one too.
Yeah, and then Diesel pounds him outside. But I mean, Nash, he just moves smaller as the Diesel heel. He looks a little bit different. Got those black gloves on. Love it, man.
I think you and I've talked about it before. I can't remember if it was on the show or not on the show, but like you said, the kind of individual pay-per-view stage setups. Do you wish they'd bring some of that stuff back?
Oh, 100%, man. It just gave a little bit of character to it, and it just felt different. It was just something to look forward to. Oh, hey, we're at God. I can't remember the name of that one pay-per-view. They used to do it in like May. I'll remember it, but they had like cars that were like broken down out there, and Dude Love and Stone Cold fought on them one time. But I love those different sets. I'm sure they were a pain in the ass. I'm sure they were expensive, but it just gave these pay-per-views a little bit more unique of a feel. Now I feel like I'll be watching pay-per-views. I'll be like, I'm watching a TV match. I'm watching it with the same set that it's on. It's like they just changed the colors a little bit. And, so I liked when pay-per-views felt like pay-per-views, not TV. That's why I like jobbers, because you do that during TV and then you have real matches during pay-per-views. I like when the set looks different. I like when the matches go a little bit longer. I like when you get more clean finishes, all of that. Pay-per-view should be different. Too often now, man, pay-per-views and TV just blend right into each other. It's hard to tell the damn difference.
Well, and I think that you and I think, in my opinion, like WCW did it always better. I still remember like one of my favorites, like the Halloween Havoc and like the Pumpkin. Bash in the Beach was always a big one too, where they'd set up just, really the beach, and they had it there. And so, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure for just pure kind of staging and the crew being able to kind of do what they need to do, it's one where they need that same set all the time, and it's just kind of easier for them. But yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is I think now they do so much with video that it's probably easier to say, hey, these are the size of the video boards, so that we're not trying to take, every month take 50 different guys' entrances and, reshape the images and change things and stuff. So I don't know, but if you just did like a big LED board in the back and then you had some, whatever your props and decorative things are, I think it'd be fun. And obviously it's just one more thing to use during matches, once or twice during the show.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, but we get it. I mean, it's what it is. So moving forward, who knows? I mean, they brought the fist back at WrestleMania for Cena, so maybe one day we'll see some of those things come back too. Who knows? But
Diesel just pounding him. I mean, I haven't seen this match in a long time, but I remember how good it was, and so arguably you're going to have the best match of his run on his last major match, but he's going to, make his friend look like $1 million, taking the tape off his wrist right now. Just complete dastardly heel. I love it.
So at this point too, like Nash, a lot of these guys knew what was happening. Oh, now Nash choking out ref bump, I guess. Yeah. Choking out Earl Hebner, with the tape that he had taken off. So
smart to choke out the ref in a no holds barred match.
We've had a few ref bumps these last couple of matches. Like, yeah.
What's he? Oh, he took Earl Hebner's belt.
You don't see that anymore at all. He took off Earl Hebner's belt and is now hitting Michaels across the back with it. That's a heel move right there. He is not, if Michael's selling as he sells, he is not laying back on that either, or laying off on that either. Jeez.
So they have their WrestleMania 11 match, and the famous story being is that the night of the match, Vince McMahon says, "Wait a second, Shawn Michaels isn't a heel; he's a babyface." And of course, they had to rebook all of the upcoming storylines because the next night on Raw, Sid powerbombed Shawn, and now Shawn's a good guy. Sid's the heel that would, be separated from him. God, you almost look at this, and again, I know they wanted to make Diesel your babyface champion. Guys, he's hanging him. Holy shit!
Can't do that.
How do you work this?
Yeah, it was different times. I guess he's like literally tying him to.
No, but I mean, he's being hung by the belt. Now I understand, but like at first he was just being hung by it.
And now you and I remember too, you and I were just talking about it before the show. The hell they the kind of low roar on Twitter that they're catching for the what was it? Oh, the Fink, tossing the Fink now to get his chair. So Diesel is.
I mean, Fink just took a legitimate bump. So he's got, man, you didn't see a lot of wrestling like this back in 96.
Nope.
Boom.
And so
share across the back as he's still being choked out by Hebner's neck or by Hebner's belt. And Hebner got his belt back.
I think because, they'll probably won't do a spot like that ever again. Because like I said, you and I were talking just off of the show with the weight belt spot or weight rope spot that they had in the Edge Orton match, and that not going over well with some people. So
what I was saying though is they do that WrestleMania 11. You almost wonder, like, I feel like you could have done a double turn between these guys. And I'm not saying they should have, but WrestleMania 11, you could have done a double turn where somehow Shawn became a babyface, Diesel became the heel at WrestleMania 11. And then all of a sudden the monster heel Diesel now retains and people are going after him all year until Shawn finally gets him. That could have been kind of interesting.
Diesel missing the chair shot, hitting the ropes. It bounces back, which, again, spot you don't see very often again either. The chair bounces back, hits Diesel in the face. I looked up, too, I had forgotten, and this could be one we talk about. That WrestleMania 11, it only had 7 matches.
Really?
I'm looking at the list right now, of just kind of the different people and things like that.
Yeah, but you forget there was also a 2-hour and 45-minute pay-per-view.
Right, and the main event was Lawrence Taylor defeating Bam Bam Bigelow.
Which wasn't a long match, but remember the entrances to that were really long, and there was a lot around it. So you had that, and you had a world title match, IC title, tag title. I mean, there was a lot on that show. But yeah, that was an interesting. I mean, that was an interesting one.
And I had forgotten, too, Diesel came out with Pamela Anderson on that one, and Shawn Michaels came out with Jenny McCarthy because that was at the height of their men's pleasure days, I guess. So,
and that was one of the rare. Yeah, that was one of the rare times where the champion actually retained back in those days. Didn't happen very often.
Yeah, rare. Yep, absolutely. So, and he actually was with Sid at that point too, which we'll talk about Sid a little bit too after this. But yeah, so Diesel going for the pin. And this was after Michael's doing the huge flip over the top of Diesel after he kind of caught him and flipped him over.
Yeah, and again, obviously self-admitted HBK mark, but man, I just thought his run during this year in 96, I mean, he had this great match. He had the match with Brett to win the title. The Bulldog feud was pretty good. The Vader feud was pretty good, but the match obviously was disappointing. You get to the Mankind match in September. That was awesome. And then November you had where Sid beat him, in the Garden, which was really good. And then in January he comes back and wins the title again. So there was just a lot of good stuff happening during this run in terms of great matches on top. Yeah,
absolutely. So Michaels too, kind of psyching himself up. The crowd's starting to get into it as well too, cheering for him. You got to love that 90s look as well too.
I love that. I love HBK's tights, too. This is a good one. I like that black and blue contrast. Did that a few times. God, listen to Vince on commentary.
Vince just super excited. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, no. So just Diesel just pounded him, man. Look at that menacing look in his eyes. It's great.
Just really good stuff there. So again, Diesel has been and this is one we'll talk about in the after, Diesel, his working this match right now, really putting in a job here. Michael's, selling really well, doing what he can to kind of get him over really, even though he was on the way out too.
Well, I told you that these In Your Houses were one match shows in a lot of cases. They started airing the vignette for this at the 1 hour, 14-minute mark of a 2-hour pay-per-view.
Yeah.
No way. Oh!
And there's
power bomb through the table. Monitors both pop up and land on Shawn. Vince looks concerned. HBK isn't moving. Vince is moving the monitors. Keep in mind, these are the old school monitors, those big ass monitors that they had, not the little chintzy flat screen ones they have now. Looks like a stiffer table, man. Those weren't working tables. Man, great power bomb on the outside.
Huge power bomb. And Diesel now, holding the belt, telling Earl Hebner to put the belt on him to screw with Michaels. Crazy.
Dude, remember, you didn't see stuff like this back then. I mean, look at that table. That's a shoot. I bet maybe they pre-broke it a little bit, but that's like a really thick table.
Right. Absolutely.
And Sean struggling to get up, just completely selling it, pushing Vince out of the way. Great. Jeff, what I miss is, the month prior at WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels crowning moment, wins the title, first time world champion at WrestleMania. I just miss those days, man. Here we go with the fire extinguisher, and we'll get back to that thought in a second. But
it's a great spot. Yep.
Yep.
So Michaels blowing the fire extinguisher in Nash's face. Like, was that a real extinguisher? I wonder how they set that up.
Yeah, you'd assume Diesel just closes his eyes. I mean, I don't know how you would really gimmick one of those things.
How do you work it? Let us know, Twitter. If you know how they work the fire extinguishers in the 90s, let us know, Twitter.
Well, what I was saying is Sean has that, crowning moment, which was just fantastic. God, I love this. Kip up coming. But what I was saying is he has that classic, world title win, and coming off this year's WrestleMania where McIntyre should have had his crowning moment. He obviously doesn't because it's an empty building. And then I guess Braun Strowman's a world champion for the first time, and who cares? Bad match, no crowning moment. So I just like the Daniel Bryan, Shawn Michaels, of the world where they win their world title for the first time. And just we don't get that very often anymore. Kind of a chair shot to the head there. Diesel put his hands up, but just pounded him, man. And it's funny watching some of the the chair shots and the tables and stuff, because it's not like they had all the gimmick stuff around the ring that they have now. It's probably a real chair. It was a real table with a tablecloth over it. So just kind of funny.
Replay now.
Yeah, and they have those monitors just fall. I mean, look at the corner of the monitor. Hell, it probably hurt more when the monitor lands on Sean than when he actually took the bump through the table. But just kind of funny how that works. So yeah, Sean.
They showed the replay too. The fire extinguisher. It was fun watching the fans because they definitely didn't expect. There's the huge boot from Nash.
I always thought he had one of the best boots. I mean, I always loved the Hulk Hogan big boot, but I always loved Nash's boot. It just seemed like his leg was about 8 feet long. Calling for the power bomb.
Such a big, just pointing to somebody's sign in the crowd absolutely right now. Yeah. So Michaels too, just acting like he's absolutely dead as well too, selling this. And this was, so at this point too, we've probably gone about 15 minutes or so. So Michaels now pounding on Diesel, kind of faking him a little bit. Just
have you ever heard? There's some guys in the business that say Shawn Michaels has one of the stiffest working punches of anyone. I just always thought that was funny. Elbow drop off the top, boom.
Big
arguably the second best elbow drop of any wrestler in professional wrestling history. Getting ready for the super kick now. To me, this is the best work that Kevin Nash ever did in his career. He had that Survivor Series match against Bret Hart. He had this match. The Taker feud was good. This was the best work he ever did in the business.
And so catching Sweet Chin Music, Diesel, catching it, not taking it, but catching it, and then clotheslining. And so you got the King and Vince standing now.
Doing commentary, standing up with two hand mics. That's great. They don't even have the headsets on. Vince just selling, Shawn Michaels being dead. But no, this is the best work that Kevin Nash ever did in his career. This run right here, this kind of 6-month run, the best matches he ever had. He was great as a heel. When he turns on Bret and attacks him, that was fantastic after he loses the title. Dude, this was just great shit that he was doing.
So again, Diesel, huge clothesline, just taking Michaels to the outside over the top rope. And so really just working him hard right now.
Do you ever notice that how many guys leave the WWF and then they don't have any good matches in WCW? I mean, what right over the guardrail, stiff, just a great move. Think about the guys that left and went to WCW, and you're hard pressed to find a really good match they had. What match did Kevin Nash have in WCW that was great? How about Scott Hall? Did Randy Savage have a great WCW match? How many Hogan matches were great there? But then even when he came back, he had some great matches after WCW went out of business. Maybe I'm too harsh on WCW, but it's so many of these guys left and just didn't have great matches or even good matches really in WCW. So now he's going after Mad Dog Vachon, who's got the prosthetic right foot that he just grabbed off of the guy's leg. I remember as a 12-year-old being absolutely horrified by this.
And this is absolutely something you would never see. on the ground without his leg now. It's from the knee down. And a low blow from Michaels, which totally legal, can do it. And now Michaels grabbing. I think that's a good point. I think that's one that maybe we need to introduce some WCW matches because we haven't done one. And so,
because a lot of them aren't that good.
And so maybe it's time for us to Twitter, maybe let us know your favorite WCW matches. Maybe it's time for us to find some people and try and do some of these. Yep.
Pounds him in the face with a prosthetic leg. Now he's going for Sweet Chin Music. I couldn't remember if he did Sweet Chin Music with that, but he just kind of like winds up and hits him with it like it's a baseball bat. All the fans standing up. They're all going along to the stomp, which, I don't love.
Tuning up the band. Terrible camera work there, but we barely got to see it.
Dude, massive pop at the end there. Massive pop. Flipping him off, screaming at him, telling him to get out of the WWF.
Yes.
Dude, he was over. He was absolutely over. Holy hell. Diesel pretending to take a swing at the cameraman. Sean's got his title. Look how fired up he was, man. Dude, the guy's just a gamer, man. I just love when these guys, they just want to go out there and steal the show, and it just means a lot to them.
And Michael's losing his mind
still. Look at this.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, he's just saying, like, dude, I am the man. Like, and it was real. He's sitting there going, the two of you are getting your ass out of here. And I know he's friends with them, but it's his company. It's his belt. Brett's sitting at home in Calgary. Nash and Hall are on their way out. Hogan's obviously nowhere to be found. He's about to turn heel. And he's like, dude, I am the fucking man of this promotion. And I am going to work every house show on top. I'm going to do 20-minute classics on top of every pay-per-view. It was real to him, man. What more can you ask for in a champion? Whether you say it worked or didn't, that's what you want. That's what Steve Austin was like as a champion. That's what Hulk Hogan was like as a champion. Some guys wear that belt better than others.
All right, good stuff. So
yeah, let's jump into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
All right, dude. What'd you think?
Good stuff. Better than I expected. Like I said, like you had said too, I had watched like the vignette beforehand. It just to kind of set up, and like it really did set up like how long these two had kind of been together and then not and all that stuff. And so I did enjoy that piece of it. I thought that was really well done. Just overall, like better than I expected.
No question. Again, and this era, man, you didn't see a lot of stuff like that. That match still holds up. No question, right? You put that on top. And again, the thing you have to remember too, and as we watch these matches, I'm not just looking at saying, oh, well, that's an 8-star classic between two guys doing a bunch of gymnastics moves. I'm looking at these things saying, how's the crowd reacting? How's the actual match? What's the emotion between these two? What's the human storyline or issue between these two? And so again, that match, it holds up today, but man, Sean's over, brand new champ, out to prove himself. Diesel is this, big badass heel. There's a great issue that's been going on and simmering between these two and has boiled over for 2 years now. Dude, this is great stuff in any era.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what happened after this? What is the aftermath? So this was actually the last televised event for both Diesel and Razor Ramon. It was actually until 2002 in WWF when they were back. So quite a while, about 8 years at that point. So a lot happened in those 8 years. And of course, the two of them going over to WCW. So we talked about the click before on the build, so we now have to talk about the curtain call. So this was a little after this. It was April 1996. We know that Nash and Hall had signed contracts with WCW. And the two companies, we all know they didn't get along at that point. We knew what was happening, and so what was happening, and all that different stuff. And so a lot of different things here. No one conclusive kind of answer as to why they left. Part of it was they said that WWF wanted to, as I said, like kind of hinder the Clique's influence, because those guys had been doing what they had done for a couple of years at that point. They had grown, kind of doing a little bit more.
Let me give some pushback on that. And
Sure.
Obviously I like these guys. I mean, look, I've seen some of these guys. I mean, especially like Nash and Hall, they've done a million shoot interviews. You hear them in all these things. You've heard their perspective. I understand how, if I wasn't part of the Clique, I'd understand why they hate them. Okay. And I understand why, a lot of some of the things these guys have said and done over the years rub people the wrong way. But here's my defense of them. What guys in that locker room cared as much as those guys did during this era?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Bret Hart, maybe The Undertaker. Dude, I mean, so to me, if I'm Vince McMahon and I got these guys that are driving down the road together, they're planning out storylines, they want to work together, they're all busting their asses, they're living and breathing this business, they're contributing ideas for their own storylines and others. Business is down. We're coming off the steroid stuff. WCW's paying Macho and Hogan a bunch of money and starting to breathe down our neck in terms of competition. They're starting to take our talent. Dude, I'm going to sit there and be like, hey, step into my office, sit down. What do you have? If I'm a coach, I'm giving the ball, I'm giving the playing time to the guys who want it the most, are working the hardest, care the most. That's what the Clique was during this era. What am I going to do? Say, yeah, you know what? I don't like all these politics. Let me make Hakushi my world champion. Let me give, Phineas Godwin a singles push. I mean, what the hell else was he supposed to do during this era?
Yeah, which not going to happen. So, right. Absolutely. So you've got these guys. And then part of it too is like, just the money piece of it. Who knows? So, their last contract match for Hall and Nash, it was actually Madison Square Garden, May 19th, 1996. So a little less than a month after this. So, you had Triple H and Nash who were working the heels at this point, and Scott Hall and Michaels were the faces. At the end of the night, you had Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash in a steel cage match. Immediately after this match finished, though, Scott Hall came into the ring, hugged Shawn Michaels, which odd because, the internet was infancy, not a thing. And so you really had, this just wasn't a thing. But you had like the fan favorites, no matter where they kind of lied. And so then you also had Triple H come into the ring, he hugged Nat, like just the four of them just really kind of, having a moment together in the ring. And then a lot of people have seen and familiar with the grainy footage of them holding their hands up, in the air, to, kind of get their cheers and things from the crowd. So, you had that going. So, of course, this was it has since been dubbed the curtain call, which at the time and all the reports that come out is that WWE hated this because kayfabe was so important at this point. And it was still a thing that we didn't know, Hulk Hogan was still telling us to eat our vitamins and things like that, or, Hollywood and all those things. So, we didn't know this, and that there was so many behind the scenes rules about these guys not breaking character. The Undertaker was the Undertaker. We didn't know, the Michelle storyline and thing that we're hearing now, like that wasn't a thing, and it was never a thing. And so the Undertaker was the Undertaker. He was undead. You couldn't convince us otherwise. So,
dude, yeah, that's the thing is like, if you're a younger fan listening to this, you just don't realize how big of a deal the curtain call was. It just, that stuff didn't happen. And so if you were a fan, then you're like, holy shit. And then the fact that it's grainy footage, how do they not have actual cameras to at least film the MSG? I swear they have footage of it, and it's funnier to think that there was only one asshole sitting up in section 535 with a camcorder that was able to record this. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but they interviewed him on a network special, the guy that filmed that.
Yeah, and it was actually two guys that came in together that they managed to get. And if you remember, somehow they got a full camcorder past security, which a camcorder for any younger listeners probably forget. This thing was probably the size of God, what do you even compare it to? Like, twice the size of, like, twice the length of like a MacBook or something like that. Like, these things were huge, like 18 inches long, like probably 10 inches tall. If you had the light, it was even bigger. Like this, it had a VHS tape in it. Just this giant. Like, I still, the holidays growing up, somebody always had one, but they got this in, and so they were the ones that got the footage. Now different reports that Vince approved like a farewell, but did not realize that it was going to go to the links that it did. And so, because of this, then after the camcorder and the footage, like then it all started getting out and seeing this stuff. And even to this day, we still see the click footage. It's referenced very infrequently, usually by the people that are safe to do it, like Triple H or Michaels or something like that. But interesting. So, aftermath and kind of playing this out and kind of explaining why I'm talking about all this, Hall and Nash were gone. Like, Diesel and Razor Ramon were leaving for the WCW. And so there was nothing that could happen to them. Michaels, who is the heavyweight champion, huge draw. You couldn't do anything to him either. And so he's going to, not be punished either. And so the punishment for all of this, it fell totally on Triple H. He was the one that had to deal with it. Really, the next couple of months after this, he had to wrestle. He went from a championship push to not. And so he did eventually, because, even though we say like, oh, you're going to get punished for this, Vince still, rewarding people that do things like this. Like, he loves it. We always talk about this, like, you and I joke like, oh, so-and-so, if they're in the news for something, and we're like, oh, they're going to win the belt in 3 months. And sure enough,
didn't Braun Strowman just get in trouble for some stupid shit he said on Twitter, and then he wins the title at WrestleMania? He didn't even have a damn match.
He was shitting on indie wrestling and saying, he
was, and actually, and here's the thing is, I don't get fake outraged over everything, but like, I saw what he said, and I'm like, yeah, he kind of sounds like an asshole. Like, I didn't think it was the right thing to say about any profession during this time period. I mean, the guy's making over $1 million, and he's sitting there like, hey, if you're an out of work indie guy, who cares? You're worthless. It's not our problem. And I'm like, man, that's a little rough thing to say. Like, I know you've worked hard to get where you are, and maybe you work harder and trained more than the average indie guy, but like, man, it was just brutal what he said. I'm not saying it should disqualify from winning the title, but my personal opinion on it was, when I read it, I'm like, yeah, the guy sounds like a real asshole.
Well, we can't all be 350 pounds and 6'10", and be able to flip over ambulances and semi trucks. So
and again, I know he worked hard for it, but I'm like, man, just maybe be a touch more sensitive during this time period.
Well, and that's like too the Lars Sullivan stuff and the push he was getting. But then, that man, I don't think we'll ever see him on TV again. But he's had a lot of off the scene stuff. But Triple H took the punishment. 5 months later, though, he did win the Intercontinental Championship. Had a lot of things happening here. This is like kind of the behind. There was actually, I found a note here. There was a DVD where the Undertaker had said that on it at the time that wrestlers' court and things like that. We've always heard the rumors of that, and wrestlers going to handle it. That him taking the punishment, it kind of endeared him to everyone else, and so. And so what it was is it was actually one of the first times, though, that any wrestling promotion had to acknowledge the fact that things were scripted. And so totally changing how we view wrestling. It's such a huge impact, not necessarily on these two performers, but the industry as a whole, and what they did after all of this, and kind of, the match, and then the curtain call. Just crazy how that all played out. So, a little bit after that, though, the individuals on this one, though, you had Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, the outsiders, appearing on WCW for the first time, being the invaders, of course, coming in and kind of dealing with that. And we all know, like, the career trajectory that has gone, and we've talked about that on previous episodes. Michaels, though, he actually lost a Survivor Series. He actually lost to Psycho Sid, who he had been paired with a little bit in this time that he was feuding with Kevin Nash over those couple of years. Sid was actually Kevin Nash's bodyguard as well, too. They kind of, I say hot shot, they actually had a little bit of back and forth with the belt at this point, because Michaels actually beat Sid again. It was that January 1997 Royal Rumble. And so, from April all the way until that January the following years. Kind of a little bit of back and forth there. Michaels having it. So, a lot happening here. A lot, that affected the greater wrestling industry. Like these guys, a lot of it, like the leaving for WCW, Michaels, really being the top star for a while here. Just a lot happening. So, Tom, you got any more thoughts on that before we get into the reviews?
No, it's a lot, but it's all great stuff, man. Hit us with the reviews, and then why don't you give your payoff score first?
That's fine. All right. So I'll get into this. And so I'll start with, again, we've been kind of trying to add the PWI list here occasionally. And so,
I find it to be interesting. Keep doing it.
I do too. Yeah. And so yes, Tom and I don't run everything by him. This is, I made an executive decision on this one. So, 1995, the year before this one, I didn't realize just how high these guys were ranked. Diesel was actually number 1 on the PWI in 1995, and Michaels was number 2. Which is crazy. I don't think I ever Diesel as a performer, you don't necessarily think, or as an in-ring technician, you don't think of, but he was number 1 on the PWI in 1995, swapped in 1996 with Michaels number 1 and Diesel number 6. And so these guys were really, according to PWI, like 2 of the top 6 wrestlers in the world, top 2 wrestlers in the world the year before. So this match, some pretty high scores on this one. We'll start with the Pro Wrestling Torch. They give this one 4 3/4 stars. And just some of the interesting write-ups here. I thought that the main event was intense and innovative and made up for a relatively weak undercard. And then also Michaels took Diesel to a 4-star match, and it could have been even better had it not been for the finish that people will be discussing for some time. Removing a man's prosthetic leg and using it in the ring certainly ranks up there as one of the more outrageous moments in a field that is dominated by outrageous moments. I love the bump that Michaels took through the table and the way all the video equipment just artfully draped around him. Visually, it could not have been closer to perfect, which absolutely. And so it's hard to not agree with that one, though.
I'll just say this. And I mean, I think about that bump. I think about the bump that Bret Hart took at Survivor Series against Diesel off the apron. I think about the bump that Sean and Mankind did at the Mind Games pay-per-view. Those tables looked way better than the, kind of plasticky, put them back together tables that they've had since then. They just broke better. I mean, they may have hurt like hell, but visually I think it was Meltzer's point, they looked a lot better than the bumps now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So this one too, this is just from the different writers on this one. I knocked Shawn Michaels for not always working at a high rate at the high end of his skills. A few more matches from Michaels like this, and I will gladly eat my words. He put away the recent annoying shtick, such as the overblown ring entrances and the clowning with the fans. He treated this match with the seriousness of not only a world title match, but also the keynote match in his feud with Diesel. He sold his ass off for the heel, which is a novel concept in the U.S. at the time. This allowed Diesel to remain credible throughout the match, creating a sense that the outcome was in doubt until the final move. Best of all, one Michaels Superman comeback after another failed to finish the match, as Diesel had an answer for each. It added up to an excellent match that bordered on being the match of the year candidate. This is the first top 10 caliber performance out of Shawn Michaels this year, and the best he has worked without a ladder in several years. Which I thought, like, that, at the time, like, kind of crazy, like how hot, like just that match was. It did not win match of the year. That actually, which rightfully so, Bret and Shawn, the Iron Man match.
Now that's a tough call. I mean.
Now, but interesting, the year before 1995, it was Diesel and Shawn that got match of the year from PWI. That WrestleMania 11 match. So,
and I think that's more commentary on how bad the wrestling was that year. I mean, not that was a bad match, but man, that was the best match of 95. That doesn't say much, because that was a good but not a great match.
So now that I'm looking at this list right now, this is very interesting. From 4 times, 93 to 96. Michaels was involved in the match of the year each of those 4 years. And so 1993, it was Shawn versus Marty at Raw, which was for the Intercontinental Championship. 1994 was the ladder match, Razor and Shawn. 95 was Diesel and Shawn at 11 for the championship. And then 96 was Brett and Shawn at the Iron Man match.
Okay. And then 98 would have been the Hell in the Cell match.
It was the Hell in a Cell, Undertaker versus Mankind.
I meant not 97. Did Taker and Shawn? How did that not win?
No, 97 was Brett and Stone Cold, the no DQ submission match from WrestleMania 13.
I thought the Hell in a Cell match between Shawn and Taker was better than that. But those are both great matches.
Nope.
So Shawn probably finished second that year, and then he's out
98.
Yeah, but I'm saying
98 was
back in 2002. He probably won 4 or 5 more match of the years.
No, 2002. That one itself went to The Rock and Hogan. And so there was actually so there was a huge stretch here from 2004 to 2010 where he was involved in every match of the year. And so 2004. This is a little bonus for all of our listeners out here. 2004 was Triple H, Benoit, Shawn Michaels, the Triple Threat. 2005 was Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21.
I just watched that recently. That was such a good match.
2006 was the Shawn versus Vince WrestleMania 22. 2007 was Cena and Michaels on a Raw episode.
How good is this guy that he takes Vince McMahon to the match of the year?
Yep. Crazy.
Oh my God.
Yep. So then you got 2007 was Cena and Michaels on Raw. 2008 was the 24 Shawn and Flair. 2009 and 2010, both matches, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Yep, from the WrestleMania streak versus career that second time around. And so
you might not like his gimmick. You may not love his promos, but who else is in the running for best in-ring worker of all time? And I'm being dead serious. Who's even close?
Yeah,
don't say Flair.
No, that many to see, and I get it. Every list is,
there's no one else even close,
right? And to have that many matches of the year, and even I know we talk a lot about Kenny Omega and Okada and some of those guys. They don't even have as many on this.
I was gonna say that some of that stuff's not my cup of tea. But here's another point: are they going to do it for the next 20 years?
Right.
You're talking 93, you're talking 2008. I mean, I know there was, again, I know he was hurt for some of that, but my God, just crazy.
And Cena on the list a whole lot too. And so it's interesting how that was. So getting back to it though, so they had, that was the PW Torch. They had 4 3/4 stars. The Observer had 4.5 stars. And again, kind of same type stuff. And it was Mad Dog was actually ringside. He lives in Nebraska at the time, so didn't know that. And so, and it says it was a major news story in Omaha years back when Vachon was hit by a car while either jogging or walking on the side of the road and needed his leg amputated. And so that's the story behind that one. And so why he was able to kind of grab his leg and do that. So interesting though how that kind of just played out. And so. They did a little bit of write-up on the click here, but it wasn't anything we've kind of already said as well, too. And so this is one, too. I will give this one, I'm just going to say 8.5. I think because the match was good. They really put on a show for all of us. But I think, too, the larger, and I gave the 0.5, I'm throwing that one out there as well, too, because the larger implication it had on wrestling as a whole, just this whole really month period of the click and the curtain call and leaving for WCW, and this match itself was the culmination of years of these guys having back and forth. That's what I want in my wrestling. I wanted to tell a good story, not just outside of the ring, but inside of the ring as well too. And I thought that they did Michaels is just one of those guys that you can list as who are you going to get a good match from? AJ Styles, you're going to get a good match from. You're going to get a good match from, Shawn Michaels. Daniel Bryan is going to carry people and put a good match out there for, people as well too. It's just how it is. And so I'm going to go an 8.5 on this one. Tom?
8.5.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you got?
Yeah. No. I like that. Gosh, you have a 2-year history here. I thought the build made all the sense in the world. You had the real life connection, which you knew existed. The intensity of the match was through the roof. I mean, they were there for a fight. This was fantastic. I thought this was just a great match. It never stalled. I mean, it was just 20 minutes of boom, boom, back and forth. Sean sold like hell. Some of the spots were great, high flying, big moves, some weapons. The intensity was massive. Crowd went nuts at the end. I've got this payoff score at a 9. I thought this was fantastic. You said it already. I'll echo, better than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to watch, which we don't always watch matches that are necessarily fun to watch. A lot of times they can be slow and kind of plotting, but this one kept going. It was good.
Yeah. Cool. That's all I got, man.
Okay.
Do we want to let everyone know what match we're covering next week?
Do we even know?
We already know?
Yeah, we
know. Okay.
Let it out there. We'll open the spoiler gates. Let's do
the return of the red and yellow. Hulk Hogan is challenging Triple H for the heavyweight championship the month after his 5-star classic against The Rock. Can he become world champion as the Babe Ruth of professional wrestling all these years later, back in the red and yellow, back in the WWF? This will be a fun one to cover as we continue our post-WrestleMania classic matches.
Yeah, exciting. Another one. People, thank you. If you stuck around to the end, that's the not only you get some fun facts, but we had a lot of good info in this one. This one was exciting. Like I said, we went to we both ranted a little bit on this here and went down some rabbit holes, but that's perfectly okay. And so
that's perfectly okay. It's our show. We never do whatever the fuck we want.
Do whatever we want, and because this match warrants it as well too. So. Lastly, kind of our competitors in this one, of course, Kevin Nash, Diesel. He is on Twitter. He is at Real Kevin Nash. So make sure to check him out there. And of course, at Shawn Michaels for the Heartbreak Kid. So you can find him there as well too. So of course, as we always say, subscribe to the show. Subscribe to the show. Give us those 5 stars. Spread the word about the show. And then we are also on our social media all the time: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Payoff Pod. We're just sitting at home. We're doing our shoot jobs from home, and so. Then we got this job as well too, kind of keeping us busy. And so drop us a line. Like I said, we've got some fans reaching out. We always appreciate. We're going to drop as soon as we can, throw some things back on UPS, and we will get some koozies shipped out to some people because we know people are enjoying that. So other than that, Tom, how about you take us home on this one?
All right, man. No, I just
for us, or
It was great. No, nothing here to share. I just wanted to thank you for being a good friend.
Oh my gosh. But you know what?
Better enemy.
Thank you, buddy. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of The Payoff.